Flerken. Or the Flerken that's in Captain Marvel, actually.
What's the name of that cat in Captain Marvel, you guys?
Goose. His name's Goose.
His name is Goose. You know, his name is something different in the comics. I can't remember. Somebody told me.
Oh, really?
Like they changed his name for some specific reason, and I can't remember now what it is. Anyway, hi. Hello. Oh, I forgot to close the...
Oh, you know what? I actually closed that earlier and did not think to double check it.
Oh, Pepper immediately. Okay. There he is. Pepper, say hello. Here's your pep time of the day. Oh, yeah, we forgot the fan on. Oh, my gosh, you guys were all out of sorts here.
I mean, at this point, we're so used to the fan being on.
Yeah, like, I barely even notice it's a thing.
Yeah.
Look at this cute little man.
Oh, I mean, I've never seen tentacles come out of his mouth, but that doesn't mean that he can't do
it. That's very true.
Have you ever swallowed a Tesseract, Pepper?
He's like, what does it look like? Teal said, my little man is screaming because he wants my bagel. I want your bagel too, Teal. I haven't had a bagel in ages.
Yeah.
Well, then again, I'm very pretentious about bagels. So if it's from a grocery store, I probably would not approve. Anyway, hello. What an informal start to this particular video.
Hey, it gives people a chance to get here.
Yeah, it's very true. That is very true. I should just always just like
for a few minutes.
Yeah, I should always just like talk whatever, not even do the like welcome to the for like the first 2 minutes at least, and then I can always cut off the 2 minutes when editing the beginning of the video is way too much work.
Yeah.
Way too much work. Oh, Tila, that's a wonderful story. She was in Mumbai for a while and she had no bagels. So her dad, when he picked her up from the airport, he pretty much just handed her a bagel straight away.
Aww.
That is legit. If you live in New York, then you probably do have a real bagel.
We have New York style bagels here somewhere.
Well, it's just harder to get them.
Yeah,
harder to come by them.
I mean, at least they're not the bagels on the Great British Baking Show.
Jesus. As long as they're not Sara Lee or Lenders, then it's probably not terrible. Anyway, bagels. Welcome to another thrilling installment of the Isolated Literary Society presents Persuasion. That's what this video is about. Reading a book. It is not about bagels.
We understand your confusion.
Oh, that's totally legit, Tila. If you have a 4-hour drive, you do not want someone to be hangry. Okay. Cool. So, how is everyone? Good, I hope. Carol and I both went on walks, and then that is why I was a little bit like,
yes,
because I came back from my walk without as much time as I had planned, and then had to just like lie in front of the fan for a while.
Yeah.
Before I could get myself back up and put, tidy up my hair and get my setup going and blah blah blah. So anyway,
take a shower right after this.
This glass I have my water in, I don't know if you'll really be able to see it on the video, but it has a boat on it.
Oh yes.
It's like a tall ship. It's a very like minimalist design that's just kind of like etched into the glass.
Interesting.
Anyway, the little flags at the top are pointed in one direction, but then the sails are like not unfurled or whatever, so you can't tell which way it's going. Yeah, Tila, it is so cool. I got it at a thrift store. I love it. It's a little heavy, so I don't use it very often. The base is very thick,
yes,
and the handle is pretty big. But I like it. It's like a very delicate glass tankard.
Words that do not often go together.
Yeah, tankards are not usually delicate. Okay, so let's get into it. Chapter 19 is where we'll be starting today. What happened last time? what did she do? Louisa is engaged to Captain Benwick.
Yes.
Also, she's doing great. Everyone, if you were worrying about Louisa,
Yes.
Louisa's fine.
She
She's
seems
engaged
to be a
Captain
much more
Benwick.
sober person now.
Yeah, honestly, it was probably good for her.
Probably.
But Captain Wentworth seems to be fine with it. And I mean, I think we all know why, because he wasn't really into Louisa that much. He might have thought about it. He might have been kind of like considering it, but he wasn't like into it. You know?
He actually didn't even spend as much time with her in Lyme as everyone thought he would while she was recovering. He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna peace out and go visit a friend."
Probably because he was picking up
on
the vibes between her and Benwick. Like, probably he was like,
Benwick was like, "Hey, can you peace out here?" I'm like, "Get in, girl. It's girl."
I think I can't imagine Captain Benwick actually say Captain Benwick even like intimating. Obviously not saying that, but like
I'm sure he did.
I can't imagine him even being like, I say, old chap. I can't just imagine he like Captain Wentworth just knows what's up, you know.
Yeah, he does.
He just picked up what was the vibes. Anyway, also Mr. Elliot continues to be sus. He continues to be kind of like nobody knows what his deal is.
He's too perfect, as Anne says.
Too smooth and plausible.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, Anne is kind of like, I don't know about this guy. I don't know about him. And I don't know either, friends.
Lady Russell thinks she knows.
Lady Russell totally thinks she knows. She thinks she knows everything.
It's very true. Like, now that I've forgiven him, he's so great and he's perfect for Anne.
Mm-hmm. And also, the Crofts are in Bath. Oh, and Anne's old school chum is now like a sick widow, and she's also in Bath to, use the baths for health reasons. And Anne's been hanging out with her, and of course, her dad and her sister are like, "Why? Why would you do such a thing?"
Yes.
At least Lady Russell proves herself once more. Just slightly able to clear the extremely low bar of being better than Sir Walter and Elizabeth by encouraging Anne to visit with her, poor, widowed, infirm school chum.
It is a very low bar.
Yes. But Lady Russell at least is able to clear that.
Yes.
So, chapter 19. Let's roll. While Admiral Croft was taking this walk with Anne and expressing his wish of getting Captain Wentworth to Bath, Captain Wentworth was already on his way thither. Before Mrs. Croft had written, he was arrived, and the very next time Anne walked out, she saw him. Mr. Elliot was attending his two cousins and Mrs. Clay. They were in Milsom Street. It began to rain, not much, but enough to make shelter desirable for women. And quite enough to make it very desirable for Miss Elliot to have the advantage of being conveyed home in Lady Dalrymple's carriage, which was seen waiting at a little distance. She, Anne, and Mrs. Clay, therefore, turned into Mullins, while Mr. Elliot stepped to Lady Dalrymple to request her assistance. He soon joined them again, successful, of course. Lady Dalrymple would be most happy to take them home, and would call for them in a few minutes. Also, I want to say, like, I was captaining. I was commenting about Mr. Willoughby being like a very perfect Regency romance name.
Oh,
it just sounds like it's the sort of name that people try to like copy when they're making, not modern Regency romances.
Yeah,
I really feel like Lady Dalrymple's up there too.
Yeah,
that's one too. They're just like, oh, I say, Lady Dalrymple.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it is.
Her ladyship's carriage was a barouche, and did not hold more than 4 with any comfort. Miss Carteret was with her mother. Consequently, it was not reasonable to expect accommodation for all the 3 Camden Place ladies. There could be no doubt as to Miss Elliot. Whoever suffered inconvenience, she must suffer none. But it occupied a little time to settle the point of civility between the other 2. The rain was a mere trifle, and Anne was most sincere in preferring a walk with Mr. Elliot. But the rain was also a mere trifle to Mrs. Clay. She would hardly allow it even to drop at all, and her boots were so thick, much thicker than Miss Anne's, and in short, her civility rendered her quite as anxious to be left to walk with Mr. Elliot as Anne could be, and it was discussed between them with a generosity so polite and so determined that the others were obliged to settle it for them. Miss Elliot maintaining that Mrs. Clay had a little cold already, and Mr. Elliot deciding on appeal that his cousin Anne's boots were rather the thickest. I feel like we're back in Emma, people taking half an hour to decide whether it's snowing enough for everyone to need to go home, or whether they all need to stay the night.
Yeah.
Although again, it's like slightly to Mrs. Clay's credit. We're always trying to decide how horrible is Mrs. Clay.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, she's certainly not as openly horrible as Elizabeth.
Well, yeah, like
but
honestly,
she is her friend.
You'd think that she would take her cue from Elizabeth, and if Elizabeth insisted that Anne could walk, she would say like, "Oh, that's right, I do have a cold. You're right. I guess I should go with my friend."
Yeah.
You know, but she was apparently so insistent that someone else had to decide. You know.
Yeah.
It seems like positives in Mrs. Clay's favor. She's not really as horrible as her friendship with Elizabeth would suggest.
Yeah.
It was fixed accordingly that Mrs. Clay should be of the party in the carriage, and they had just reached this point when Anne, as she sat near the window, descried most decidedly and distinctly. Sorry, descried?
Oh.
Descried?
I think it's like espied.
I guess so.
Old word for something.
Yeah, I mean, it means she saw it. Because it says descried most decidedly and distinctly Captain Wentworth walking down the street. I don't know that I've ever seen descried.
Yeah, I've seen scried or scrying.
Right, yeah. I assume it's the same root as scrying, but it's, anyway. Her start was perceptible only to herself, but she instantly felt that she was the greatest simpleton in the world, the most unaccountable and absurd. For a few minutes she saw nothing before her. It was all confusion. She was lost. And when she had scolded back her senses, she found the others still waiting for the carriage, and Mr. Elliot, always obliging, just setting off for Union Street on a commission of Mrs. Clay's. She now felt a great inclination to go to the outer door. She wanted to see if it rained. Why was she to suspect herself of another motive? Captain Wentworth must be out of sight. She left her seat. She would go. One half of her should not always be so much wiser than the other half, or always suspecting the other of being worse than it was. She would see if it rained. She was sent back, however, in a moment by the entrance of Captain Wentworth himself, among a party of gentlemen and ladies, evidently his acquaintance, and whom he must have joined a little below Milsom Street. He was more obviously struck and confused by the sight of her than she had ever observed before. He looked quite red. For the first time since their renewed acquaintance, she felt that she was betraying the least sensibility of the two. She had the advantage of him in the preparation of the last few moments. All the overpowering, blinding, bewildering first effects of strong surprise were over with her. Still, however, she had enough to feel. It was agitation, pain, pleasure, a something between delight and misery.
I feel you.
He spoke to her and then turned away. The character of his manner was embarrassment. She could not have called it either cold or friendly, or anything so certainly as embarrassed. After a short interval, however, he came towards her and spoke again. Mutual inquiries on common subjects passed, neither of them probably much the wiser for what they heard, and Anne continuing fully sensible of his being less at ease than formerly. They had, by dint of being so very much together, got to speak to each other with a considerable portion of apparent indifference and calmness, but he could not do it now. Time had changed him, or Louisa had changed him. There was consciousness of some sort or other. He looked very well, not as if he had been suffering in health or spirits, and he talked of Uppercross, of the Musgroves, nay, even of Louisa, and had even a momentary look of his own arch significance as he named her. But yet it was Captain Wentworth, not comfortable, not easy, not able to feign that he was. It did not surprise, but it grieved Anne to observe that Elizabeth would not know him. She saw that he saw Elizabeth, that Elizabeth saw him, that there was complete internal recognition on each side. She was convinced that he was ready to be acknowledged as an acquaintance, expecting it, and she had the pain of seeing her sister turn away with unalterable coldness. Elizabeth is just the worst.
Yes.
Just continues to be garbage. How is she even related to Anne?
Yeah.
Lady Dalrymple's carriage, for which Miss Elliot was growing very impatient, now drew up. The servant came in to announce it. It was beginning to rain again, and altogether there was a delay and a bustle and a talking, which must make all the little crowd in the shop understand that Lady Dalrymple was calling to convey Miss Elliot. At last, Miss Elliot and her friend, unattended but by the servant, for there was no cousin returned, were walking off, and Captain Wentworth, watching them, turned again to Anne, and by manner rather than words, was offering his services to her. "I am much obliged to you," was her answer, "but I am not going with them. The carriage would not accommodate so many. I walk. I prefer walking." "But it rains." "Oh, very little. Nothing that I regard." After a moment's pause, he said, "Though I came only yesterday, I have equipped myself properly for Bath already. You see," pointing to a new umbrella, "I wish you would make use of it, if you are determined to walk, though I think it would be more prudent to let me get you a chair." She was very much obliged to him, but declined it all, repeating her conviction that the rain would come to nothing at present, and adding, "I am only waiting for Mr. Elliot. He will be here in a moment, I am sure." She had hardly spoken the words when Mr. Elliot walked in. Captain Wentworth recollected him perfectly. There was no difference between him and the man who had stood on the steps at Lyme, admiring Anne as she passed, except in the air and look and manner of the privileged relation and friend. He came in with eagerness, appeared to see and think only of her, apologized for his stay, was grieved to have kept her waiting, and anxious to get her away without further loss of time and before the rain increased. And in another moment they walked off together, her arm under his, a gentle and embarrassed glance, and a "good morning to you" being all she had time for as she passed away. As soon as they were out of sight, the ladies of Captain Wentworth's party began talking of them. "Mr. Elliot does not dislike his cousin, I fancy." "Oh, no, that is clear enough. One can guess what will happen there. He is always with them, half lives in the family, I believe. What a very good-looking man." "Yes, and Miss Atkinson, who dined with him once at the Wallaces, says he is the most agreeable man she was ever in company with." "She is pretty, I think, Anne Elliot, very pretty when one comes to look at her. It is not the fashion to say so, but I confess I admire her more than her sister." "Oh, so do I." "And so do I. No comparison. But the men are all wild after Miss Elliot. Anne is too delicate for them." I don't know who these bitches are, but I like them.
Just passing judgment on. Well, are they the people who were with Captain Wentworth, or are they just like random?
I think they're friends. He was with remember he entered with a party of ladies and gentlemen who appeared to be his
but we don't know who they are.
Yeah, we don't know who they are, but it says the ladies of Captain Wentworth's party. So
yeah,
he at least knows some people in this party. Anyway, I recently changed a setting on my channel where to hold suspicious or whatever messages in the chat for review. And I didn't know entirely what that meant, but one time I had like a creep show up in my one of my concerts and say a bunch of inappropriate stuff. So I was like, I'll try that setting. And both of Tila's recent comments with the word bitch in them. One which is, her sister is such a bitch, I swear to God. And then later, I also like these bitches. It was an italics and it gave me the option to show or hide the message. So maybe I'll actually turn that setting off because I don't mind people referring to Elizabeth as a bitch in the chat.
Hopefully the trolls are few and far between.
Yeah. It's only happened like twice in my entire YouTube career that I've had like a live chat where someone was being inappropriate. Anyway, where were we? Oh, yes. Yeah, I like these, these very frank and somewhat catty young ladies. But they like Anne. They like her better than Elizabeth. So, obviously, they're great. Yes. Anne would have been particularly obliged to her cousin if he would have walked by her side all the way to Camden Place without saying a word. She had never found it so difficult to listen to him, though nothing could exceed his solicitude and care, and though his subjects were principally such as were wont to be always interesting, praise, warm, just, and discriminating of Lady Russell, and insinuations highly rational against Mrs. Clay. But just now she could think only of Captain Wentworth. She could not understand his present feelings, whether he were really suffering much from disappointment or not. Until that point were settled, she could not be quite herself. She hoped to be wise and reasonable in time, but alas, alas, she must confess to herself she was not wise yet. Another circumstance very essential for her to know was how long he meant to be in Bath. He had not mentioned it. Oh, sorry, I forgot to. I should have showed you guys the illustration while I was rambling about the comments. There's Anne walking away with Mr. Elliot while Captain Wentworth looks on.
Oh, yes.
I love it. She's looking back at him like, bye. And we can see that clearly Mr. Elliot is still at least in partial mourning. Again, he is all in dark colors, like the other gentleman. Okay. She was not wise yet. How long he meant to be in Bath. He had not mentioned it, or she could not recollect it. He might only be passing through, but it was more probable that he should be come to stay. In that case, so liable as everybody was to meet everybody in Bath, Lady Russell would in all likelihood see him somewhere. Would she recollect him? How would it all be?
Well, she hasn't actually seen him. I forgot that Lady Russell hadn't actually seen him.
Oh, yeah, not since the old days.
Yeah.
She had already been obliged to tell Lady Russell that Louisa Musgrove was to marry Captain Benwick. It had cost her something to encounter Lady Russell's surprise, and now, if she were by any chance to be thrown into company with Captain Wentworth, her imperfect knowledge of the matter might add another shade of prejudice against him. What would Lady Russell... I mean, she already doesn't like Captain Wentworth, but
yeah,
I'm wondering what her imperfect knowledge of the matter would do to add another shade of prejudice against Captain Wentworth.
Maybe she would think that he, just kind of discarded Louisa or something.
Yeah,
I don't know why she would think that though. Because
it seems like the obvious conclusion to jump to is, oh my gosh, is Captain Wentworth has he been jilted?
Yeah,
I guess. If she already doesn't like Captain Wentworth, maybe she would come to the conclusion of...
I could see how she would think that,
it was his fault.
Everybody else seems to acknowledge that it's the other way around.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, the following morning, Anne was out with her friend, and for the first hour, in an incessant and fearful sort of watch for him in vain. But at last, in returning down Pulteney Street, she distinguished him on the right-hand pavement, at such a distance as to have him in view the greater part of the street. There were many other men about him, many groups walking the same way. There was no mistaking him. She looked instinctively at Lady Russell, but not from any mad idea of her recognizing him so soon as she did herself. No, it was not to be supposed that Lady Russell would perceive him till they were nearly opposite. She looked at her, however, from time to time, anxiously, and when the moment approached which must point him out, though not daring to look again, for her own countenance she knew was unfit to be seen, she was yet perfectly conscious of Lady Russell's eyes being turned exactly in the direction for him, of her being, in short, intently observing him. She could thoroughly comprehend the sort of fascination he must possess over Lady Russell's mind. The difficulty it must be for her to withdraw her eyes. The astonishment she must be feeling that 8 or 9 years should have passed over him, and in foreign climes, and in active service too, without robbing him of one personal grace. At last, Lady Russell drew back her head. Now, how would she speak of him? You will wonder, said she, what has been fixing my eye so long, but I was looking after some window curtains which Lady Alicia and Mrs. Frankland were telling me of last night. They described the drawing-room window curtains of one of the houses on this side of the way, and this part of the street as being the handsomest and best hung of any in Bath, but could not recollect the exact number, and I have been trying to find out which it could be, but I confess I can see no curtains hereabout that answer their description.
Lies!
Are you fucking kidding me right now, Lady Russell?
I know, right? Like, dude, you're not even good at covering.
Yeah, Tila said she might think he's jilted Anne too, but that's the thing, is that I don't think it would even occur to her that he would try again for Anne.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. And she wouldn't think ill of him for jilting Anne because I think she just wouldn't even assume it could happen.
Yeah.
Because she probably thinks Anne's relatively safe.
Yeah.
But also she just would not even assume he would even try again, I think.
I don't know. Honestly, yeah.
But anyway, Lady Russell's being fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anne sighed and blushed and smiled in pity and disdain. either at her friend or herself. It's your friend. It's at Lady Russell. Go with that instinct, Anne.
Yeah.
The part which provoked her most was that, in all this waste of foresight and caution, she should have lost the right moment for seeing whether he saw them. A day or two passed without producing anything. The theatre or the rooms where he was most likely to be were not fashionable enough for the Elliots, whose evening amusements were solely in the elegant stupidity of private parties.
I love that.
Elegant stupidity of private parties.
This book is
pretty
just
great.
full of great lines.
Yeah, it really is, in a way that I just like. I obviously I enjoy Jane Austen's writing, but I feel like that
She's like
there's just been a lot more great little turns of phrase in this book than the other ones. And also just catty ones too. Just so much shade.
Yeah.
I guess she had gotten older by this point and she was like over it.
Yeah.
The elegant stupidity of private parties in which they were getting more and more engaged. And Anne, wearied of such a state of stagnation, sick of knowing nothing, and fancying herself stronger because her strength was not tried, was quite impatient for the concert evening. It was a concert for the benefit of a person patronized by Lady Dalrymple. Of course they must attend. It was really expected to be a good one, and Captain Wentworth was very fond of music. If she could only have a few minutes' conversation with him again, she fancied she could be satisfied, and as to the power of addressing him, she felt all over courage if the opportunity occurred. Elizabeth had turned from him. Lady Russell overlooked him. Her nerves were strengthened by these circumstances. She felt that she owed him attention. She had once partly promised Mrs. Smith to spend the evening with her, but in a short, hurried call, she excused herself and put it off, for the more decided promise of a longer visit on the morrow. Mrs. Smith gave a most good-humored acquiescence. Mrs. Smith is the ill widow friend. "By all means," said she. "Only tell me about it when you do come. Who is your party?" Anne named them all. Mrs. Smith made no reply, but when she was leaving her, said, with an expression half serious, half arch, "Well, I heartily wish your concert may answer, and do not fail me tomorrow if you can come, for I begin to have a foreboding that I may not have many more visits from you." Anne was startled and confused, but after standing in a moment's suspense, was obliged, and not sorry to be obliged, to hurry away. Mrs. Smith is a clever one.
Yes.
She knows what's up.
What is she talking about?
Chapter 20. Chapter double X. Sir Walter, his 2 daughters, and Mrs. Clay were the earliest of all their party at the rooms in the evening, and as Lady Dalrymple must be waited for, they took their station by one of the fires in the octagon room. But hardly were they so settled when the door opened again and Captain Wentworth walked in alone. Oh, shit. Yes, Sheila. Chapter kisses. If you're British, that's what a little XX means, right? Oh my gosh. Tila, if you're a fan of Gossip Girl, you should listen to my podcast, Pilot House. We did an episode about Gossip Girl. And we had
really?
We had a lot of fun talking about it. Yes. Captain Wentworth walked in alone. Gasp. Anne was the nearest to him, and making yet a little advance, she instantly spoke. He was preparing only to bow and pass on, but a gentle, "How do you do?" brought him out of the straight line to stand near her, and making enquiries in return, in spite of the formidable father and sister in the background. Their being in the background was a support to Anne. She knew nothing of their looks, and felt equal to everything which she believed right to be done. While they were speaking, a whispering between her father and Elizabeth caught her ear. She could not distinguish, but she must guess the subject, and on Captain Wentworth's making a distant bow, she comprehended that her father had judged so well as to give him that simple acknowledgment of acquaintance, and she was just in time, by a side glance, to see a slight courtesy from Elizabeth herself. This, though late and reluctant and ungracious, was yet better than nothing, and her spirits improved. They at least had the sense to acknowledge him when a member of their family was conversing with him a few feet away.
Right. Again, it's a very low bar.
Right. Yeah, Tila, if you're not sick of my voice yet by listening to all of my videos, there's 2 years worth of my podcast you can also listen to. And I'm only one of the voices on that, although I probably talk more than half of the time.
I don't know. I feel like you and Strangely probably.
You'd be surprised. You'd think, knowing our personalities, that we'd be pretty evenly matched, but I think I do.
Nah.
I think he makes a conscious effort to. If we both start to talk, he will let me go, because there's enough examples in the world where a masculine person is talking over a woman. So, all right. After talking, however, of the weather and Bath and the concert, their conversation began to flag, and so little was said at last that she was expecting him to go every moment. But he did not. He seemed in no hurry to leave her. And presently, with renewed spirit, with a little smile, a little glow, he said, "I have hardly seen you since our day at Lyme. I am afraid you must have suffered from the shock, and the more from its not overpowering you at the time." She assured him that she had not. "It was a frightful hour," said he, "a frightful day." And he passed his hand over his eyes as if the remembrance were still too painful. But in a moment, half smiling again, added, "The day has produced some effects, however, has had some consequences which must be considered as the very reverse of frightful. When you had the presence of mind to suggest that Benwick would be the properest person to fetch a surgeon, you could have little idea of his being eventually one of those most concerned in her recovery." "Certainly I could have none, but it appears, I should hope it would be a very happy match. There are on both sides good principles and good temper." "Yes," said he, looking not exactly forward, "but there, I think, ends the resemblance. With all my soul I wish them happy, and rejoice over every circumstance in favor of it. They have no difficulties to contend with at home, no opposition, no caprice, no delays. The Musgroves are behaving like themselves, most honorably and kindly, only anxious with true parental hearts to promote their daughter's comfort. All this is much, very much in favor of their happiness, more than perhaps—" He stopped. A sudden recollection seemed to occur, and to give him some taste of that emotion which was reddening Anne's cheeks and fixing her eyes on the ground. After clearing his throat, however, he proceeded thus. "I confess I do think there is a disparity, too great a disparity, and in a point no less essential than mind. I regard Louisa Musgrove as a very amiable, sweet-tempered girl, and not deficient in understanding, but Benwick is something more. He is a clever man, a reading man, and I confess that I do consider his attaching himself to her with some surprise. Had it been the effect of gratitude, had he learned to love her because he believed her to be preferring him, it would have been another thing. But I have no reason to suppose it so. It seems, on the contrary, to have been a perfectly spontaneous, untaught feeling on his side, and this surprises me. A man like him, in his situation, with a heart pierced, wounded, almost broken. Fanny Harville was a very superior creature, and his attachment to her was indeed attachment. A man does not recover from such devotion of the heart to such a woman. He ought not. He does not." I feel like a lot of things are being said that aren't being said right now, you guys.
Yes.
Either from the consciousness, however, that his friend had recovered, or from some other consciousness, he went no farther. And Anne, who, in spite of the agitated voice in which the latter part had been uttered, and in spite of all the various noises of the room, the almost ceaseless slam of the door and ceaseless buzz of persons walking through, had distinguished every word, was struck, gratified, confused, and beginning to breathe very quick and feel 100 things in a moment. It was impossible for her to enter on such a subject, and yet after a pause, feeling the necessity of speaking, and having not the smallest wish for a total change, she only deviated so far as to say, "You were a good while at Lyme, I think." "About a fortnight. I could not leave it till Louisa's doing well was quite ascertained. I had been too deeply concerned in the mischief to be soon at peace. It had been my doing, solely mine. She would not have been obstinate if I had not been weak. The country round Lyme is very fine. I walked and rode a great deal, and the more I saw, the more I found to admire." "I should like very much to see Lyme again," said Anne. "Indeed, I should not have supposed that you would have found anything in Lyme to inspire such a feeling. The horror and distress you were involved in, the stretch of mind, the wear of spirits. I should have thought your last impressions of Lyme must be of strong disgust." "The last few hours were certainly very painful," replied Anne. "But when pain is over, the remembrance of it often becomes a pleasure. One does not love a place the less for having suffered in it, unless it has been all suffering, nothing but suffering, which was by no means the case at Lyme. We were only in anxiety and distress during the last 2 hours, and previously there had been a great deal of enjoyment. So much novelty and beauty. I have travelled so little that every fresh place would be interesting to me. But there is real beauty at Lyme, and in short, with a faint blush at some recollections, altogether my impressions of the place are very agreeable. Yeah, Teal says, damn that subtext, though.
Yeah.
As she ceased, the entrance door opened again, and the very party appeared for whom they were waiting. Lady Dalrymple was the rejoicing sound, and with all the eagerness compatible with anxious elegance, Sir Walter and his 2 ladies stepped forward to meet her. With all the eagerness compatible with anxious elegance. We're on a great track record for the illustrations in this book so far. Like, the first couple were a bit in the way of Emma, where they didn't really have anything to do with the actual story, but so far they've all been timed pretty well and actually
things that are actually happening.
Yeah, in the actual story,
not just things that people are speculating
casually
about.
Referenced. Remember in Emma, one time someone mentions a guy, they were like, oh yes, this is a lawyer I know, and his name. He's mentioned twice, I think, in the whole book. Yeah. And they did a whole illustration of him.
Yeah. There's also the illustration of what's his name? Mr. Elton supposedly showing the portrait of Harriet to his mother and sister.
Which didn't even happen.
Which was purely in Emma's imagination.
Yeah, that was totally Emma just imagining that it had happened.
Yeah.
And they thought it necessary to draw an illustration of that.
Yeah.
So absurd. Anyway, I much better approve of this one. I don't know who decides what gets illustrated.
No idea.
I don't know if that's just the illustrator, if they're like, look, we need this many illustrations, try to space them out about this many pages or something, or does the publisher make that decision and then just send the descriptions to the illustrator?
No.
I don't know. I have no experience with book illustrations. Lady Dalrymple and Miss Carteret, escorted by Mr. Elliot and Colonel Wallace, who had happened to arrive nearly at the same instant, advanced into the room. The others joined them, and it was a group in which Anne found herself also necessarily included. She was divided from Captain Wentworth. Their interesting, almost too interesting conversation must be broken up for a time.
almost too interesting.
That conversation was almost too interesting. But slight was the penance compared with the happiness which brought it on. She had learnt, in the last 10 minutes, more of his feelings towards Louisa, more of all his feelings than she dared to think of. And she gave herself up to the demands of the party, to the needful civilities of the moment, with exquisite though agitated sensations. She was in good humor with all. She had received ideas which disposed her to be courteous and kind to all, and to pity everyone as being less happy than herself. It's interesting, because, I mean, that conversation does clearly show that he's not that big a fan of Louisa.
Yeah, he's not heartbroken.
If he was heartbroken, he might have said, well, I don't think it's a very good match. And then he would have been saying, well, Captain Benwick's not lively enough for a girl of such high spirits as Louisa or something. And instead he's going, I don't think that Louisa's going to be good for Captain Benwick.
Yeah.
So it does not seem like he is that fond of her.
Yeah, no. He doesn't think that she's that extraordinary.
Right, yeah, exactly.
One wonders, who are you thinking of when you're talking about extraordinary women?
Yeah. Well, and he makes a point of saying, I don't see how Captain Benwick could possibly be over Fanny Harville this quickly. I mean, you just don't get over an extraordinary woman that quickly. I should know. Oh, I forgot I was talking to you, Anne. Sorry. Oops. The delightful emotions were a little subdued when, on stepping back from the group to be joined again by Captain Wentworth, she saw that he was gone. She was just in time to see him turn into the concert room. He was gone. He had disappeared. She felt a moment's regret. But they should meet again. He would look for her. He would find her out long before the evening were over. And at present, perhaps, it was as well to be asunder. She was in need of a little interval for recollection. Upon Lady Russell's appearance soon afterwards, the whole party was collected, and all that remained was to marshal themselves and proceed into the concert room, and be of all the consequence in their power, draw as many eyes, excite as many whispers and disturb as many people as they could. Very, very happy were both Elizabeth and Anne Elliot as they walked in. Elizabeth, arm in arm with Miss Carteret, and looking on the broad back of the Dowager Viscountess Dalrymple before her, had nothing to wish for which did not seem within her reach. And Anne, but it would be an insult to the nature of Anne's felicity to draw any comparison between it and her sisters, the origin of one all selfish vanity, of the other all generous attachment. But I almost was going to make a comparison between these two women, but I forgot Elizabeth. It's terrible.
Yes.
She deserves no such comparisons. Anne saw nothing, thought nothing of the brilliancy of the room. Her happiness was from within. Her eyes were bright and her cheeks glowed, but she knew nothing about it. She was thinking only of the last half hour, and as they passed to their seats, her mind took a hasty range over it. His choice of subjects, his expressions, and still more his manner and look, had been such as she could see in only one light. His opinion of Louisa Musgrove's inferiority, an opinion which he had seemed solicitous to give, his wonder at Captain Benwick, his feelings as to a first strong attachment, sentences begun which she could not finish, his half-averted eyes, and more than half-expressive glance, all declared that he had a heart returning to her at least, that anger, resentment, avoidance were no more, and that they were succeeded not merely by friendship and regard, but by the tenderness of the past. Yes, some share of the tenderness of the past. She could not contemplate the change as implying less. He must love her. I'm just really worried. We have so much book left. It just seems too soon.
I know.
For this
That can't be
revelation.
happening quite yet.
Something must be. Something bad's about to happen. Oh, yes. Hello, Aaron. I'm glad you could join us. As Tila says, things have gotten a little spicy and romantic while you've been away. I don't know how to kind of catch you up, but Louisa Musgrove, who is the one who fell on her head and who was thought to be being courted by Captain Wentworth, she's fine, but she's also engaged to Captain Benwick, other guy who was in line. So Captain Wentworth is free. And Anne has been hanging out with him and, well, not hanging out, but like they have talked. And anyway, they're at a concert right now and he just said a bunch of stuff that seems to heavily suggest that he still cares for her. God damn it.
What the hell? It's like a bee on
Can you guys hear that? It sounds like it's
like a bee on a motorcycle.
It's got to be someone using like a some kind of hedge trimmer or something. Anyway,
why?
it actually sounds like it's coming from upstairs, though.
Oh, it could be.
Doesn't sound like it's coming from outside.
Could be some kind of vacuum thing.
I don't know. Oh, okay. I don't know if you guys can hear this at all, but there's like a crazy. It's like someone is doing a demolition derby on a moped upstairs in the upstairs apartment.
It's a mosquito demolition derby.
Yeah. Very, very tiny mopeds just riding around.
Yes.
Okay. Very annoying, but I'm going to try and focus. Anyway. But yeah, so Anne is all aflutter because she believes that Captain Wentworth is still in love with her. These were thoughts with their attendant visions, which occupied and flurried her too much to leave her any power of observation, and she passed along the room without having a glimpse of him, without even trying to discern him. When their places were determined on, and they were all properly arranged, I said that so weird, and they were all properly arranged, she looked round to see if he should happen to be in the same part of the room, but he was not. Her eye could not reach him, and the concert being just opening, she must consent for a time to be happy in a humbler way. The party was divided and disposed of on two contiguous benches. Anne was among those on the foremost, and Mr. Elliot had maneuvered so well with the assistance of his friend Colonel Wallace as to have a seat by her. Miss Elliot, surrounded by her cousins and the principal object of Colonel Wallace's gallantry, was quite contented. Anne's mind was in a most favorable state for the entertainment of the evening. It was just occupation enough. She had feelings for the tender, spirits for the gay, attention for the scientific, and patience for the wearisome, and had never liked a concert better, at least during the first act. Towards the close of it, in the interval succeeding an Italian song, she explained the words of the song to Mr. Elliot. They had a concert bill between them. This, said she, is nearly the sense, or rather the meaning of the words, for certainly the sense of an Italian love song must not be talked of. But it is as nearly the meaning as I can give, for I do not pretend to understand the language. I am a very poor Italian scholar. Yes, I see you are. I see you know nothing of the matter. You have only knowledge enough of the language to translate at sight these inverted, transposed, curtailed Italian lines into clear, comprehensible, elegant English. You need not say anything more of your ignorance. Here is complete proof. I will not oppose such kind politeness, but I should be sorry to be examined by a real proficient. Aaron says a poor Italian scholar creates a fun visual. Oh, we just watched a movie with a poor Italian scholar in it.
Yes.
We watched an adaptation of The Taming of the Shrew from 2005. It was a BBC TV movie adaptation set in the present day, but adapted into the present day and not using the original text. Yeah. It's very weird, y'all. It's very weird. Okay, where was I? I have not had the pleasure of visiting in Camden Place so long, replied he, without knowing something of Miss Anne Elliot, and I do regard her as one who is too modest for the world in general to be aware of half her accomplishments, and too highly accomplished for modesty to be natural in any other woman. For shame, this is too much flattery. I forget what we are to have next, returning to the bill. Perhaps, said Mr. Elliot, speaking low, I have had a longer acquaintance with your character than you are aware of. That's threatening.
That's a little weird.
Indeed? How so? You can have been acquainted with it only since I came to Bath, excepting as you might hear me previously spoken of in my own family. I knew you by report long before you came to Bath. I had heard you described by those who knew you intimately. I have been acquainted with you by character many years. Your person, your disposition, accomplishments, manner, they were all described. They were all present to me. Present to me? No. Yeah, this is all very creepy.
Yeah, seriously.
Mr. Elliot was not disappointed in the interest he hoped to raise. No one can withstand the charm of such a mystery. To have been described long ago to a recent acquaintance by nameless people is irresistible, and Anne was all curiosity. She wondered and questioned him eagerly, but in vain. He delighted in being asked, but he would not tell. No, some other time or other perhaps, but not now. He would mention no names now, but such, he should assure her, had been the fact. He had many years ago received such a description of Miss Anne Elliot as had inspired him with the highest idea of her merit and excited the warmest curiosity to know her. Anne could think of no one so likely to have spoken with partiality of her many years ago as the Mr. Wentworth of Monkford, Captain Wentworth's brother. He might have been in Mr. Elliot's company, but she had not courage to ask the question. The name of Anne Elliot, said he, has long had an interesting sound to me. Very long has it possessed a charm over my fancy, and if I dared, I would breathe my wishes that the name might never change.
Ooh.
I don't know. Sorry, there was a bug in front of me. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean.
It means that he wants to marry her.
Oh, I forgot they had the same last name.
Yeah.
It was like, wouldn't he want her name to change because he would want to marry her? But I forgot that they have the same last name as their cousins.
Yeah. Not creepy at all.
I forgot that that's the thing. Yes.
Still a thing.
Such she believed were his words, but scarcely had she received their sound than her attention was caught by other sounds immediately behind her, which rendered everything else trivial. Her father and Lady Dalrymple were speaking. A well-looking man, said Sir Walter. A very well-looking man. A very fine young man indeed, said Lady Dalrymple. So I had to give somebody a ridiculous voice in this
That
book.
is the only correct voice for anyone named Dalrymple.
Lady Dalrymple. The Dowager Viscountess? She can only speak one way, and it's this.
Yes.
More air than one often sees in Bath. The Irish, I dare say. No, I just know his name. A bowing acquaintance. Wentworth. Captain Wentworth of the Navy. His sister married my tenant in Somersetshire, the Croft who rents Kellynch. Before Sir Walter had reached this point, Anne's eyes had caught the right direction and distinguished Captain Wentworth standing among a cluster of men at a little distance. As her eyes fell on him, his seemed to be withdrawn from her. It had that appearance. It seemed as if she had been one moment too late, and as long as she dared observe, he did not look again. But the performance was recommencing, and she was forced to seem to restore her attention to the orchestra and look straight forward. When she could give another glance, he had moved away. He could not have come nearer to her if he would. She was so surrounded and shut in, but she would rather have caught his eye. Mr. Elliott's speech, too, distressed her. She had no longer any inclination to talk to him. She wished him not so near her.
Yeah, I feel that.
I guess I kind of understand her initially being, like, kind of intrigued, but, like, oh, people were saying nice things about me? Nobody ever says nice things about me.
Yeah.
That's novel.
Yeah.
But then it got creepy, and then he basically said, I'm gonna marry you, and then she's like, shit!
Never mind,
Uh-oh.
not interested.
Uh-oh. Hopping on the nope train, backing out of time. Nope, 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 nope. Anyway.
I've never heard that, but that's
I confess, a little bit of my
your own invention.
My own invention. I had a friend who once said, like, wow, yeah, I'm getting right on the nope train. And I was like, right, and then backing out of town. And then I did the nope, 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 and then nope, nope. And I was like, that's hilarious. I'm going to start doing that all the time.
There you go.
I haven't done it in a while. I'm glad it's caught now on video for everyone to see.
Yep.
All right. I'm hilarious, you guys. I don't know if you know this. Okay, right. Mr. Elliot is creepy. The first act was over. Now she hoped for some beneficial change. And after a period of nothing saying amongst the party, some of them did decide on going in quest of tea. Anne was one of the few who did not choose to move. She remained in her seat, and so did Lady Russell. But she had the pleasure of getting rid of Mr. Elliot, and she did not mean, whatever she might feel on Lady Russell's account, to shrink from conversation with Captain Wentworth if he gave her the opportunity. That's fucking right, Anne. I love that she's getting, like...
Yeah.
She's growing some balls.
Getting feisty.
Yeah. He did not come, however. Anne sometimes fancied she discerned him at a distance, but he never came. The anxious interval wore away unproductively. The others returned, the room filled again. Benches were reclaimed and repossessed, and another hour of pleasure or of penance was to be sat out. Another hour of music was to give delight or the gapes, as real or affected taste for it prevailed. To Anne, it chiefly wore the prospect of an hour of agitation. She could not quit that room in peace without seeing Captain Wentworth once more, without the interchange of one friendly look. In resettling themselves, there were now many changes, the result of which was favorable for her. Colonel Wallace declined sitting down again, and Mr. Elliot was invited by Elizabeth and Miss Carteret, in a manner not to be refused, to sit between them. And by some other removals, and a little scheming of her own, Anne was enabled to place herself much nearer the end of the bench than she had been before, much more within the reach of a passer-by. She could not do so without comparing herself to Miss Larolles, the inimitable Miss Larolles, but she did it. Who's Miss Larolles?
Maybe one of the singers or something. I don't know. It sounds like something we're supposed to just get.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, is this like a reference that we're supposed to understand? The inimitable Miss Larolles.
Like some sort of celebrity.
Maybe a character in a play or something.
Or that's possible.
I don't know, or in a book.
Sounds like a celebrity to me, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah, who knows? But still she did it, and not with much happier effect. Though by what seemed prosperity in the shape of an early abdication in her next neighbors, she found herself at the very end of the bench before the concert closed. Such was her situation, with a vacant space at hand, when Captain Wentworth was again in sight. She saw him not far off. He saw her too, yet he looked grave, and seemed irresolute, and only by very slow degrees came at last near enough to speak to her. She felt that something must be the matter. The change was indubitable. The difference between his present air and what had been in the octagon room was strikingly great. Why was it? She thought of her father, of Lady Russell. Could there have been any unpleasant glances? He began by speaking of the concert gravely, more like the Captain Wentworth of Uppercross, owned himself disappointed, had expected better singing, and in short must confess that she should not be sorry when it was over. Anne replied and spoke in defense of the performance so well, and yet in allowance for his feelings so pleasantly, that his countenance improved, and he replied again with almost a smile. They talked for a few minutes more. The improvement held. He even looked down towards the bench, as if he saw a place on it well worth occupying, when, at that moment, a touch on her shoulder obliged Anne to turn around. It came from Mr. Elliot. Dude, do not ruin this. I will destroy you.
I feel like Anne might be about to deck him.
Yeah. He begged her pardon, but she must be applied to explain Italian again. Miss Carteret was very anxious to have a general idea of what was next to be sung. Anne could not refuse, but never had she sacrificed to politeness with a more suffering spirit. A few minutes, though as few as possible, were inevitably consumed, and when her own mistress again, when able to turn and look as she had done before, she found herself accosted by Captain Wentworth in a reserved and yet hurried sort of farewell. He must wish her good night. He was going. He should get home as fast as he could. "Is not this song worth staying for?" said Anne, suddenly struck by an idea which made her yet more anxious to be encouraging. "No," he replied impressively. "There is nothing worth my staying for," and he was gone directly.
Whoa.
What? Can you get the lines,
yeah.
actually? What? That's an intense thing to say.
Yes.
It's one thing to say, like, "Oh, no, sorry, I gotta go," but, like, to say, "There's nothing for me to stay for." Like, whoa.
Feels very pointed.
Yeah. I mean, he might have some reason to think that maybe she is just being nice to him because she feels guilty about the past rather than that she's still in love with him. And maybe he saw her interacting with Mr. Elliot and was like, "Oh, well, that must be a thing." I don't know. Who knows? Jealousy of Mr. Elliot. It was the only intelligible motive. Captain Wentworth jealous of her affection. Could she have believed it a week ago, 3 hours ago? But for a moment, the gratification was exquisite. But alas, there were very different thoughts to succeed. How was such jealousy to be quieted? How was the truth to reach him? How, in all the peculiar disadvantages of their respective situations, would he ever learn her real sentiments? It was misery to think of Mr. Elliot's intentions. Their evil was incalculable.
Wow.
That was an intense chapter.
Yeah.
Not only did Captain Wentworth basically confess that he's still in love with Anne, and then Mr. Elliot actually confessed that he's planning to marry Anne.
Yes.
Anne is also decisive in saying, like, no, thank you.
Well, hasn't actually said it yet, but that's her.
Oh, I hope their name would never change. Yeah. That's
the fact that she didn't say anything is kind of more of an answer, almost then, because didn't it say that she doesn't respond to that, but that I'm sure he wouldn't be dissuaded by her not responding. That's true.
He probably thinks she was just like surprised or startled or something. Hey guys, look at Pepper. He's being adorable again. Hi, buddy.
A little flirkin.
Yeah.
Flirkin McGurkin.
So cute. Does your mouse make a nice pillow? This is Gavin, his favorite mouse.
Oh,
okay. I see how it is. My hand has been claimed for the duration of the evening.
Well, it's a good thing you don't have to read anymore.
Yes. Well, luckily we are done for the evening. This is a very well timed 2 chapters, just under an hour. Perfect. Yeah, that was a very intense weirdo. Do you want me to pet you or not? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I probably have sunscreen on my hands. He just licked one of my hands. I'm like, it's like, sorry, my dude. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, that was intense. Also, there's this much left of the book, and that's like quite a lot, and I'm kind of afraid of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially now that we know Mr. Elliot's intentions. And not only do we know them, he has started to declare them.
Yes.
He has intimated them at least. Although he's still, a suspicious character. So he could be just saying that to like mess with Anne or to feel her out. He could be saying such things to Elizabeth as well, for all we know.
That is true. That is true, actually. I never thought of that.
He could be flirting with Miss Carteret and Mrs. Clay as well. We don't know. We don't know what he's up to. Anyway, yeah. Gosh, I just don't even know what's going to happen. But we'll find out tomorrow.
Yes. Tune in next time.
Yeah, tune in tomorrow. Same bat time. Same bat channel. Same, more like cat channel, am I right? Yeah, good times. Anywho, yeah, that's I'm excited for tomorrow to find out, and also nervous because I feel like we're not out of the woods yet. It's gonna get worse before it gets better, I suspect.
Yeah.
There will be more trials and tribulations, and it's just so frustrating too that like at this time period she couldn't even really seek out his company.
Yeah. They have to be in a public place where they happen to run into.
She can't send him a letter. She can't like go to his house and be like, "Hello, I just wanted to let you know I'm not interested in Mr. Elliot. Just in case you were wondering."
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
She just can't do that.
Yeah. She can't just tell him.
Yeah.
That his jealousy is unfounded.
Yeah. Like,
no.
She could suggest it if they happened to have a conversation in a public place and it kind of like came up in conversation.
Yeah.
She could attempt to sort of, in a veiled way, say, "Oh, yes, Mr. Elliot is very nice. I'm sure he is interested in marrying my sister. Definitely. That would make my father and my sister very happy if that happened. Yes. Everyone would be so happy if that happened. Everyone." Like she could kind of suggest something of that nature.
Yeah.
But even if they saw each other, she couldn't be like, "Oh, hey, heads up, I'm not interested in Mr. Elliot." Just so you know.
Yeah.
Putting that out there. She can't even like bring up the conversation. Really.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Not really.
People can't just talk to each other.
I know. This is why so much subtext exists.
Right? You know, I think that's one of the reasons that modern romantic comedies have to go through so many jump through so many ridiculous hoops and have so many ridiculous misunderstandings and people jumping to conclusions, because they're trying to recapture the level of misfortune and confusion of these early novels.
Yeah.
But now people can just like call each other and be like, "Hi, I like you."
Yeah.
They, or like, "Oh, I don't like this other person," or whatever, know, like people can just talk to each other. And so romantic comedies now always involve someone overhearing something and jumping to an absurd conclusion.
Yeah.
Because I really think it's because people are trying to recapture this kind of level.
I think you might be right. I do
just
have
thought
a friend
of this,
who
seems sound.
He can't handle romantic comedies because it like triggers all of his anxiety. Miscommunication is like a big.
Yes.
It gives him so much anxiety.
Yeah.
So watching romantic comedies is like, he's like sweating and just like, I can't handle this.
Oh,
This is like the kind of thing that terrifies me about real life relationships. I don't want to watch a movie about it.
Oh, that is legit. That is totally legit.
Yeah. Like, I can't say I blame you, dude.
I'm glad that while we're having this discussion about film theory, Aaron and Tila are singing Taylor Swift in the chat. Because I said they're not out of the woods. I don't know if you know that song.
I don't.
Are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods? Are we in the clear yet? Are we in the clear yet? Are we in the clear yet? In the clear yet? Good. It's pretty catchy. We covered it strangely, and a bunch of other people, including me, covered it one year at Jamboree.
I mean, it must have a catchy tune, since if those are the only words.
No, I'm sure that it has other words, but that's the chorus.
That's
Pepper's still holding my hand down.
Would expect.
He's looking at me like, hello. Why are you not petting me? This is what you're here for.
Worship
anyway.
and praise. This is what we are here for. Oh, what? Do you not get?
Do you want to be pet or not? What do you want from me? Yeah, I've got something in my hands you don't like. I understand. I'll wash them. And
he keeps licking them.
Yeah, I know. I'll wash my hands and then you can lick them to your heart's content. Okay, I promise. Anyway, this guy over here.
Bless me.
All right, that's it for today, friends. We'll see you all tomorrow, 6:30 Pacific, as usual. Links below for things. I think I know everybody who's in here right now, but stuff. Is there anything else I need to? There's no weird scheduling things or anything. This is great, actually. I was trying to kind of guess how much longer we had in the book because I'm going up to Bellingham not too long. And strangely is quarantining, and then he's going to get tested, and then we're going to go record a bunch of podcasts for like 2 weeks. It's going to be amazing. But I was thinking it would be nice if I could finish the book before that starts and then take a little break while we're doing that. So anyway, good night, and I will see you guys tomorrow. And fingers crossed, everything will turn out fine.